Hey there, fellow travelers, Mark here with Wolters. Today we're here in Mexico City, and today we're going to talk about the scams you might need to watch out for when you do come here to Mexico. So whether you're coming here to Mexico City, or you're going to the beaches of Cancun, or you're heading to Cabo, or maybe you got a work conference in Guadalajara, these are some things you might want to look out for. And there's one thing I think is important no matter where you go in the country, that is the unlicensed taxis. Look, don't pick up taxis on the street, okay? Make sure you're going to a taxi stand. You use an Uber or a Didi, one of the ride-share apps out there. Have your hotel book a ride for you. If you're coming to the airport, believe me, the airports, they'll have places that will set up drivers for you. And that's one of the things you want to be careful with, because you just hop in a cab and you go, a scam might be happening to you. Now, I'm not saying something bad's going to happen to you, but you might get scammed out of some money. So it's really important, if you're getting a cab, discuss the price beforehand when you go, so you kind of know what you're going to pay, instead of finding out later it's triple the price you thought it was going to be, or they zero out the meter. You don't want to deal with that. That's why it's better to use one of the ride-share apps, one of the official taxis you don't have to worry about. That's something people do talk about a lot when they do come here. So I want to have you ready for that, okay? And if you're going to go around, one thing that's cool in Mexico, you can take public transportation. It goes a lot of places. Like here in Mexico City, the metro or the bus metros as well can take you all over. And you do need to be a little bit careful on there. But I will say, pickpockets on the public transportation here in Mexico, especially if you're going to like popular tourist stops, you do need to pay attention. And what usually happens is when you're getting in or off of the metro, or in or out of the bus, that's when it's a little bit easier for someone to grab your stuff. So when you're getting on or off the metro, or in or out of one of the buses, just pay a little bit more attention to your stuff. Keep your wallet in your front pocket. You know what? If you have the money belt, maybe use them when you come here. You do need to be aware of that when you are here, because pickpockets, they are existing here. And it's not just in public transportation, also at popular tourist sites. Yes, if you're heading to Chichen Itza, if you're going to other ruins around, maybe you're heading to beaches, don't leave your stuff out there. You do need to be careful. Now, there are some scams you don't realize are happening until after it happens. You're like, wait a minute, what happened here? And I think one of the big ones is when you go to some tourist sites, if you're just using any random cab, they might tell you, oh, that place is closed, that bar is closed, that restaurant is closed. Here, I got a better idea for you. Now, this is a lot less than it used to be, because now with the internet, you know when things are open and closed, but it's something you want to kind of take care of. Like if you're going to the canals right here in Mexico City, where you can go float on the boats and the mariachi people playing, sometimes some people be like, oh yeah, that one's closed. You need to go to this dock to get a boat here. And it's actually kind of a scam, so you go to a higher price one, because then they get a kickback. That's why it's important. If you're going to go to these places, it's really a good idea to get a tour guide to make sure that everything's on the up and up, and they know the prices. They know when it's like, no, there's other docks that are open. You can get a boat out to hear the mariachi, go see the markets and stuff. So I just want to be aware of that. And I think that's why it's really important, no matter where you go to Mexico, if you're going to be taking tours, get your tours from your hotel or from a registered travel agent, so you have someone you can complain to if things don't go right. Because if you're in Cancun, you'll see people selling tours on the street, right? And are they legit? A lot of times they are, but sometimes they're not. And are you ever going to find Luis, who was standing on that street corner 6 days ago when you sign up for this tour? Maybe not. So it's really important to book with a reputable agency, or just book with your hotel, because they know who to call. They know if something goes wrong or somebody's late, they can take care of it. Now, one of the fun things about coming to Mexico, if you're in Mexico City, you might rent some mariachi bands, and some people say, oh, it's really stereotypical, but actually the mariachi music is really a fun kind of thing to do. But I will tell you, not all the mariachi bands are on the up and up when it comes to the tipping and paying for the music. So I'm going to tell you this. It's not necessarily a scam, but just something to be aware of. If you are going to have the mariachi band play, maybe give the money beforehand. Hey, here's what I have. Here's what I'm going to tip you. So then you know how much they're going to play. Because sometimes, like if you're in Mexico City and you're on the little boats, sometimes the price they tell you afterwards might be a little shocking. So just be aware of that. Now, another scam you might see when you go around is when you pay, and there might be a little bit of a currency mix-up. Oh, you give them a 500, and they say, oh no, you gave me a 50, and maybe you don't know the money very well, so that's why it's important to know what the 50 looks like, the 100, the 200, the 500. You want to know what the bills look like so you know what you need to have, right? And so that's why it's kind of important to pay attention, because sometimes they'll be like, oh no, you gave me a 50, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, and you give it over to them. That's why it's always important to really pay attention what you're giving over. So no, dude, I gave you a 500, not a 50. So you have that, because yes, that's happened to me a couple times. People are like, oh, I think you gave me the wrong bills. No, I gave you a 500 because that's what you came out of the ATM. And that's something you're going to see anywhere around the world when there's different currencies that people aren't used to. And I think that's why it's important to mention here in Mexico, you have the same tourist scams like all over the world. You know, like 3-card Monty, or my personal favorite is the bird poop, or the mustard on you, or the oops, I spilled some ice cream on your shoulder kind of thing. It's called a distraction scam. And therefore, like when you're distracted getting your stuff cleaned off, their buddy came by and takes your bag. You do need to be aware of that because it does happen. Not all the time, but do be aware, because some people feel that, oh, everyone here is trying to be friendly, they're just trying to scam me. No, people in Mexico are super friendly and super helpful. But yes, there are some people that do try to scam you, so do just pay attention. Have your usual travel wits about you. If you're in Cancun, it's not just, oh, I'm about the beach, I don't have to worry about anything. I've got my magic fanny pack that protects me as a traveler. No, you do need to use your smarts when you travel here in Mexico, wherever you're gonna go. And I think one of the things you need to use your smarts about is with the bribes. Now, the thing is sometimes there's fake police that might ask you for a bribe, or a real police officer might ask you for a bribe. Now, there's good cops here. I'm not saying all the cops are bad. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. There's some really wonderful police officers here. I can't go wrong with Mexico. Like, my dad worked here for years. I had great times here in Mexico. I love this country. I love the people. But it's one of those things, you're like, oh, do we have to worry about the federales pulling us over, asking for something? You do need to be aware of that, okay? So if there is someone to ask you to pay a fine or something, maybe ask, okay, can we pay it at the station so I can pay there? Usually that might like take care of things. Or, you know, sometimes you're in such a situation like, I don't want to deal with it, and you might pay them off. But do be aware of that, because you do see police presence lots of places here, and they do close off roads, and there are actually police barricades sometimes that they're just checking, and sometimes some people are like, hey, and sometimes they're not. But it is good to be aware of that when you're going around. That's why it's kind of smart if you're going to be driving, you know, when you're here in Mexico, you don't want to drive at night, you know, be careful, especially in the rural areas when you're going around, just have a heads up. And I think that leads into something that some people think is a scam, but it's not. And that is driving in Mexico with your car from the US. What you have to realize is, yes, if you have your car from the US, you can drive near the US border, and you can drive by Cancun, and you can drive in Baja California, but everywhere else you go in Mexico, your car has to have a temporary vehicle import license that lets you drive in the country. Because if you don't have that, guess what? They can impound your car, and good luck getting it back. You might be like, you know what? Getting it back is more than getting a new car. I'll just get a new car. So make sure, if you're going to be exploring more with your own car within Mexico, you got your RV and stuff, make sure you get that vehicle registered. Otherwise, you're going to be out of luck. And if you say, well, I'm driving to Cancun and I can do it in Cancun, yeah, but you're not going to have that permission the whole way. So make sure you get that registered, okay, so you're not having any problems, because a lot of people have had that problem over the years. Now, another thing I want you to be aware of when you are here is whenever you get your bill here in Mexico, make sure you look at the itemized bill. Did you pay for everything that you ate? Or perhaps was there a couple extra cervezas, or a pan dulce, or an extra taco or two that kind of popped up on the bill? Because sometime in tours this isn't something that just happens in Mexico. This happens all over the world. Sometimes they might add an extra thing or two to the bill, so do be paying attention to that. Also, if they add a service charge on there, you don't have to tip because you already paid service. But realize here in Mexico, it's not a scam. You do tip. I know in some countries they feel like tipping is a scam, but here in Mexico, you do tip 10 to 15% at the restaurants. When you go to the grocery store, the guy that's bagging your stuff, you might tip him some pesos. It's not a scam. That's really a thing that happens here. And I think that's important to mention. There are things that you think are scams, but actually aren't, like tipping the grocery person when they're bagging your stuff. And I think another one that's not a scam, but it feels kind of scammy, is you're going to Cancun. You'll notice they're selling all these tours to go see stuff, right? Oh, we're going to go to Chichen Itza, we're going to go to Cenote, we're going to do this. Or you're here in Mexico City, oh, we're going to take you out to the pyramids, we're going to do this. And you might find different prices for different tours. And they're like, we'll pick you up at your hotel. And they're like, oh, great. And they go and they take you and they drop you off at a central location. Then you get on a big bus and you go on a tour with everyone else. And if you start asking people, some people paid, oh, I paid, $60 for this tour. I paid $100 for this tour. I paid $80 for this tour. I paid $40 for this tour. And you're all on the same bus. It's not a scam. It's just they negotiated better with you than the other ones did. So do be aware of that yeah, most of the tours you're going to go on, unless you go on a private tour, you're going to be people that pay different prices than you. So be aware of that, okay? So it's not a scam, but it's something you need to be thinking about. Oh, and then when you go on those group tours, it's not a scam when they take you to the the artisanal markets and stuff, the artist markets. But just know you do need to negotiate those prices there. And believe me, at those artisanal markets where a lot of tourists go, like the one when you're coming back from Chichen Itza going to Cancun, just now, those prices are marked up quite a bit, so you have a lot of room to negotiate, okay? Now, if you're in town at a normal market where normal people are buying food, you're not really negotiating too hard when you're there, okay? So don't think the scammy kind of negotiating stuff really depends where you are. Also, something that's not a scam but you think is kind of weird is the lack of change if you're in taxis or taco stands. Like, wait, you don't have change for my bills? No, a lot of times they don't. So when you are here, to avoid that I don't have change, so you get no change back, bye, kind of thing with the taxi or a taco stand, make sure you have smaller bills, have those coins so you can pay, because you whip out a 500 peso note, they might have change for that, okay? So do be aware of that, because it's not a scam, it's just a real life issue. That's why when you go exchange money, you might want to ask them for smaller bills, or if you go to the ATM and they only give you 500s, maybe go back into the bank and exchange those for smaller bills, because I do want to tell you about a scam with the ATMs. You only want to use ATMs that are inside of a bank, okay? The ones outside, they might have those little skimmers on there that can steal your card information. Just go into the bank, it's a lot safer, do it that way. But also, when you are there and they ask you on the ATM, do you want to take the conversion? Never take the conversion. I mean, the one they offered for me, I was looking at losing 10 or 15% versus the normal exchange rate, okay? It was like literally the exchange house gave me a better rate than the bank was going to when they gave me the conversion. So when you take out the money, just say, hey, just take out in pesos. Also, when you're paying with your credit card at restaurants, okay? If they say, oh, would you like the conversion to pay in dollars or euros? Say, no, thank you. Do it in pesos, because your bank back home is going to give you a better rate than some random restaurant or bank here in Mexico, all right? So be aware of that. Another thing is important if you bring cash and you're going to go to the exchange house to exchange money, don't just go to the first one. Make sure you look around and see what all the different rates are, but also ask if they charge any fees or anything, because some might have a better rate, but they charge a fee, so it doesn't make as much, or other ones, it might go the other way around. So it's a good idea to kind of look around and see what you're going to get, because even at the airport, you're going to have different rates, even at the airport when they're all lined up next to each other. So something to kind of think about. It's not necessarily a scam, but it's something you want to kind of look out for in case, oh, that's a great exchange rate, but then they charge you something just to exchange money. Now, as a tourist, when you go around, you're going to meet tons of great people here in Mexico. It's a fantastic thing. People are going to come up to you. And one thing I want to say is the people that come up to you, they try to sell you things. That is not a scam. They're actually trying to make a living. Like you're a place like Cancun. I mean, they make their living off selling like trinkets to tourists, right? But the thing is, if you're in Mexico City, people will come up and offer to sell you things. Those aren't usually scams. They're actually selling you things, and you do kind of negotiate the price on those. But I will tell you, if people come up and just give you something, that's a scam. If they're coming up to give you a flower, or they want to give you a bracelet, or they want to tie something on your bag, that's usually a scam where later on they're like, oh, but I gave you this free thing. Why don't you give me a little propina? Give me a little tip. Give me a little something for this nice thing, because we're friends. So you do want to be aware of that. And the thing is, when you come to Mexico, there are some scams you need to think about, but overall, it's not that bad. Like when people read about it online, then there's gonna be scammers everywhere. It's not that way. And the Mexican people, if they see somebody getting scammed, they're like, hey, yo, tourist, man, pay attention. Usually they're pretty helpful with it too. So just know, if there's other people around, the scamming is a little bit more down, right? So you're a little bit okay. I will say though, one thing that isn't a scam, but I want to mention, is when you come out of the airport in Cancun, all those people trying to sell you timeshares. Look, timeshares are not a scam. Timeshares are whatever they are, an investment, a hotel, whatever, a place for you to go. I'm not gonna get in trouble by saying they're scams, but it is something that you need to realize. There can be some really high pressure sales pitches there that sometimes later on you feel like you got scammed out of your money, you got scammed or pressured into buying something. So do be careful. And I see this a lot when you come out of the airport in Cancun. That's why, going back to that, don't get the cabs kind of thing. Make sure you're arranging your transportation. So if you're coming into Cancun Airport, they've got a sign that says Mark Wolters, and you can follow them and go right past all the unofficial taxis, go right past all the timeshares, and not have to worry about it. Anyway, what are some of the scams you've seen when you've been in Mexico? Let us know in the comments below, and please give advice for different towns and cities and areas where you are here in Mexico about scams, because they are different places around the country. Anyway, I wish y'all the best. I'll say bye from here in Mexico City.